The golden towers of Zephyr Prime reached toward the stars like the fingers of ancient gods. Emperor Vextar stood in his crystal palace, watching ships from 100 worlds come and go through the bustling space lanes. For 1,000 years, the Zephyrian Empire had ruled the galaxy with an iron fist wrapped in silk gloves. Today felt like any other day of absolute power. The communication alert chimed softly in the throne room. Vextar barely glanced at the hologram that appeared before him. Another petition from some backwater world, no doubt. Another species begging for mercy or requesting the honor of joining the Empire. He had heard it all before, but this message was different. A human male appeared in the blue light of the projector. He wore a simple military uniform, dark blue with silver trim. His face was hard, weathered by years of service. The human spoke clearly, without the usual trembling fear that marked communications from lesser species. Emperor Vextar of the Zephyrian Empire. I am Captain Jake Morrison of the Earth Defense Fleet. I bring you a message from the United Human Colonies. Vextar raised one scaled eyebrow. Humans. He had heard whispers of this species from the frontier scouts, a young race that had barely discovered faster-than-light travel. Their technology was primitive, their ships little more than metal boxes with engines. The Empire's expansion had reached their small corner of space. Morrison continued speaking. Our colonies on New Eden, Liberty Station, and Haven's Rest have been marked for what you call integration. We reject this claim. These worlds belong to humanity, and we will defend them. The Emperor's courtiers began to laugh. The sound echoed through the massive chamber like the chittering of insects. Vextar himself felt a smile cross his reptilian features. This was amusing. The human showed no fear, no proper respect for imperial might. Leave our colonies alone, Morrison said, his voice steady as stone. This is your only warning. Withdraw your expansion claims or face the consequences. The hologram flickered and died. Silence filled the throne room for a long moment. Then the laughter began again, louder this time. Advisor Kekmore, a thin creature with multiple arms, scuttled forward. My lord, Kekmore wheezed. The humans display remarkable ignorance. Our scouts report their entire military consists of perhaps 200 ships. Crude vessels with projectile weapons and primitive energy shields. They cannot possibly threaten the Empire. Vextar stood from his throne, his massive form casting shadows across the floor. And yet they dare to threaten us. How long has it been since any species showed such foolish courage? Not since the Corvain Rebellion, my lord. 300 years ago. Yes. And we crushed them in 6 days. The Emperor walked to the great window that showed the capital world's skyline. Millions of beings from hundreds of worlds lived here, in harmony under imperial rule. What do we know of these humans? Another advisor, General Corvin, stepped forward. His scarred face bore the marks of countless battles. They evolved on a world they call Earth. High gravity, dangerous weather, many predator species. This has made them somewhat more aggressive than most species we encounter. They have colonized only 3 worlds beyond their home system. Their military strength? Negligible, my lord. They use chemical explosives, metal projectiles, and basic energy weapons. Their ships are slow and poorly armored. A single battle cruiser could destroy their entire fleet. Vextar nodded slowly. And yet they send us warnings. They speak of consequences. Do they not understand what happens to those who oppose the Empire? Apparently not, my lord. Our xenology experts believe their isolation has left them ignorant of galactic politics. They do not comprehend the futility of resistance. Light years. Away on the human colony of New Eden, Commander Lisa Brooks watched the sun set over fields of golden wheat. The colony was young, only 15 years old, but it had grown into something beautiful. Families walked the streets of New Haven City. Children played in parks. Farmers tended crops that would feed 2 million people. All of it was about to die. Brooks turned away from the window of her command center. Her staff waited for orders, their faces grim. They all knew what was coming. The long-range sensors had detected the Zephyrian scout ships weeks ago. The Empire had marked their world for conquest. "Status report," Brooks said. Lieutenant Sam Rodriguez looked up from his console. "Evacuation ships are loaded and ready. We can get 60% of the civilian population off-world before they arrive. And the rest? We'll have to take their chances in the underground shelters." Brooks closed her eyes. She had read the reports from other worlds that had faced imperial expansion. Sometimes the Empire allowed conquered populations to live as slaves. Sometimes they didn't bother. There was no way to know which fate awaited New Eden. Military status? 3 destroyers, 12 fighters, and the orbital defense platforms. We're outnumbered and outgunned, but we'll give them a fight. Brooks almost smiled. Rodriguez was young, barely 25, but he had the fire that seemed to burn in all humans. Even facing impossible odds, he spoke of fighting. Maybe that was what made their species different. Maybe that was why they sent warnings instead of surrender offers. Back on Zephyr Prime, Emperor Vexitar had made his decision. Send the Eternal Dominion to these human colonies. Captain Zekmore will demonstrate imperial power. Give the humans 72 hours to surrender completely. If they refuse, he has permission to use whatever force necessary. General Corvin bowed. And if they accept surrender, then they will serve the Empire as all conquered peoples do. Their worlds will be integrated, their resources claimed, their population relocated as needed. Vextar returned to his throne. But I suspect these humans will choose the hard way. Their warning suggests they do not understand the reality of their situation. The orders went out through subspace relays. The battlecruiser Eternal Dominion received its mission and began the journey to human space. Captain Zekmore reviewed the tactical data on his new opponents. Humans, a species so primitive they still used kinetic weapons in space combat. This would be the easiest conquest of his career. On New Eden, Commander Brooks received word that the Empire had responded. A single ship was coming. One massive battle cruiser against their small defense force. She gathered her people in the briefing room. "They're sending one ship," she told them. "One ship to conquer 3 worlds. That tells us everything we need to know about how seriously they take our warning." "Maybe they're right to," said Major Tony Blake, her second in command. "Maybe we're being stupid. Maybe we should have just packed up and left." Brooks looked around the room at her officers. Young faces, determined faces, human faces. Maybe. But Captain Morrison sent them a message from all of humanity. We warned them. We told them what would happen if they came here. She stood up, placing her hands on the table. Now we have to back up those words. We have to show them that humans mean what they say, even if it kills us. Lieutenant Rodriguez raised his hand. "Commander, what are our real chances?" Brooks considered lying, offering false hope, but these people deserved the truth. Against their technology, almost 0, but we're not fighting to win. We're fighting to prove a point. We're fighting to show the galaxy that humanity will not go quietly into slavery. The meeting ended. Officers returned to their duties. Ships prepared for battle. On the surface below, the last evacuation transports lifted off, carrying women and children to safety among the stars. 3 days later, the Eternal Dominion arrived at the edge of the New Eden system. Its massive bulk blotted out stars as it moved toward the human colony. Captain Zekmore sent his ultimatum. "Humans of New Eden, you will surrender immediately and prepare for integration into the Zephyrian Empire. You have 72 hours to comply. Resistance will result in the complete destruction of your military forces and the pacification of your population." Commander Brooks received the message in her command center. She looked at the tactical display showing the alien ship. It was 5 times larger than her biggest destroyer. Its weapons could crack planets. Its shields could stop anything in her arsenal. She opened a channel to respond. "Captain Zekmore, this is Commander Lisa Brooks of New Eden Colony. We received your ultimatum. Here is our answer." She paused, thinking of the billions of humans back on Earth, of the colonies they had built with their own hands, of the freedom they had fought so hard to achieve. Go to hell. The die was cast. Humanity had given its warning. The Empire had ignored it. Now both sides would learn what happened when an unstoppable force met an immovable object. The galaxy was about to discover that sometimes the smallest dog had the biggest bite. The 72 hours passed like a countdown to doomsday. Commander Lisa Brooks stood in her command center, watching the alien ship grow larger on her screens. The Eternal Dominion moved with the slow confidence of a predator that had never known defeat. Its dark hull seemed to eat the light of New Eden's sun. "All stations report ready," Lieutenant Rodriguez said from his position. His voice was steady, but Brooks could see the tension in his shoulders. Everyone knew what was coming. "Civilian evacuation complete?" Brooks asked. "Last transport jumped to hyperspace 20 minutes ago. The planet is clear except for essential personnel and volunteers." Brooks nodded. "Good. Whatever happened next, at least the families were safe. The children would live to remember New Eden, even if the world itself died today." Captain Zekmore's voice filled the command center as his final message arrived. "Humans, your time has expired. You have chosen destruction over wisdom. So be it." Attack began without ceremony. Blue-white beams of plasma energy lanced out from the Eternal Dominion. They moved like lightning, each one carrying enough power to level a city. The first target was Defense Platform Alpha, the largest of New Eden's orbital weapons. The plasma beam struck the platform dead center. Brooks watched the screen as Alpha simply ceased to exist. One moment it was there, bristling with weapons and shields. The next moment there was only expanding gas and twisted metal. The platform hadn't even had time to return fire. "Platform Beta, evasive maneuvers," Brooks ordered. But it was too late. The second beam was already on its way. Platform Beta tried to dodge. Its thrusters fired, pushing the massive structure sideways. But the plasma moved faster than anything human technology could manage. The beam clipped Beta's lower section, and the entire platform began to spin apart like a broken toy. "Platform Gamma is pulling back," Rodriguez reported. "They're trying to get behind the moon. It won't help," Major Blake said quietly. "Look at those weapons. They can hit anything in the system." He was right. The third beam reached out across space and found Platform Gamma even as it tried to hide. The explosion lit up the dark side of New Eden's moon like a second sunrise. In minutes, New Eden's entire orbital defense network was gone. 3 platforms that had taken years to build, destroyed without firing a single shot in return. The Eternal Dominion hadn't even moved from its position at the edge of the system. "Sir," Rodriguez said, his voice tight with anger. "Request permission to launch fighters." Brooks hesitated. The fighters were their only remaining weapons, but sending them out now would be suicide. The alien ship could swat them like flies, but she could see the looks on her people's faces. They needed to hit back. They needed to prove that humanity would fight. Permission granted. All fighters, launch immediately. 12 human fighters roared out of their hidden bays on New Eden's surface. They were small ships, each one carrying a single pilot and enough weapons to destroy a city. Against the massive alien battlecruiser, they looked like insects attacking a giant. Lieutenant Sam Rodriguez led the attack in his modified interceptor, the Falcon's Edge. He had spent years working on the ship, upgrading its engines and weapons, with every spare part he could find. Now he would learn if all that work meant anything. "All fighters follow my lead," Rodriguez said over the radio. "We're going in fast and low. Hit them with everything we have." The fighters accelerated toward the Eternal Dominion. The alien ship seemed to notice them for the first time. Weapon turrets along its hull began to track the approaching humans. The first fighter died before it got within 1,000 kilometers of the target. A plasma beam reached out and vaporized the small ship in an instant. The pilot didn't even have time to scream. "Keep formation," Rodriguez ordered, even as 2 more fighters exploded around him. "Don't give them easy targets." But the alien weapons were too accurate, too powerful. The fighters tried to dodge, tried to use speed and maneuverability to stay alive. It didn't matter. One by one, they died in silent flashes of light. Rodriguez found himself alone, his fighter somehow still intact, as he closed the final distance to the enemy ship. The Eternal Dominion filled his view screen, its hull stretching out like a metal mountain. Weapon turrets tracked his approach, ready to kill him as they had killed all the others. Then something strange happened. Rodriguez began to fly crazy. Not the careful, controlled maneuvers they had taught him at the academy. Wild, random movements that made no sense. He spun his ship, rolled it, dove and climbed without pattern or purpose. His flight path became impossible to predict. The alien. Weapons tried to track him, but they couldn't lock on. Their targeting systems had been designed to fight civilized opponents who followed logical tactics. Rodriguez was flying like a madman, and it confused their computers. He reached the Eternal Dominion's hull and fired everything he had. Missiles, energy beams, and old-fashioned bullets hammered into the alien ship's shields. The shields held, absorbing the damage easily. But for the first time in centuries, someone had actually hit a Zephyrian battlecruiser in combat. Rodriguez's ship shook as return fire filled the space around him. He pulled away from the enemy hull, still flying his wild pattern. More shots missed him by meters. His ship took several hits, systems failing one by one, but he stayed in the fight. "This is Rodriguez to all human forces," he broadcast on all frequencies. "I got through their shields. Repeat, I got through their shields. Their targeting systems can't handle random flight patterns." Captain Zekimor stared at his tactical displays in disbelief. The human fighter had actually damaged his ship. Not much damage, barely worth mentioning, but damage nonetheless. In 300 years of service, no enemy had ever gotten past the Eternal Dominion's defenses in the opening engagement. "Sir," his weapons officer reported, "the human ship is still out there. Our targeting systems keep losing lock." "Then target manually. Kill that pilot now." But Rodriguez was already limping away, his damaged fighter barely staying in space. He had proven his point. Human courage and unpredictability could overcome superior technology, at least for a few minutes. On Earth, General Patricia Kane studied the combat data streaming in from New Eden. Her analysts worked around the clock, examining every detail of the fight. What they found changed everything. "The alien weapons are incredibly powerful," Kane told her staff, "but they're also predictable. They fire in patterns, like they're following a script. Their targeting systems expect logical behavior from their enemies." "What does that mean for us?" asked Colonel Steve Murphy. "It means we've been thinking about this all wrong. We've been trying to match their technology, build better shields and stronger weapons. But that's not how we win. We win by being human." Kane pulled up tactical projections on the main screen. "Every species the Empire has conquered probably fought the same way. Logical formation flying, textbook tactics trying to minimize losses. That's exactly what their systems are designed to defeat. So what do? We fight like humans. Wild, unpredictable, willing to take crazy risks. We make their advanced technology work against them." Back at New Eden, Commander Brooks received a message from Captain Morrison aboard the Earth Defense Fleet. Help was coming, but it would take days to arrive. She had to hold out until then with whatever forces remained. "Status report," she called. "Out. All orbital platforms destroyed. 11 fighters lost. Rodriguez made it back, but his ship is scrap. We have the surface defense batteries and whatever ships we can get airborne." Brooks looked at the tactical display. The Eternal Dominion hung in space like a sword over their heads. It could destroy the colony at any time. But it hadn't. Captain Zekimor was playing with them, demonstrating his power before delivering the final blow. "Broadcast this message on all frequencies," Brooks ordered. "To Captain Zekimor of the Eternal Dominion. You wanted to see what humans are made of. You wanted to test our resolve. Well, you got your answer. We're still here. We're still fighting. And we're not going anywhere." She paused, thinking of the words Captain Morrison would use. "You had your demonstration. Now comes the real war." The message went out across space, carrying humanity's defiance to the stars. Other worlds, other species, heard those words and wondered, what kind of people were these humans? What made them fight when fighting was hopeless? Captain Zekmore received the message in his command center. His officers waited for orders. The demonstration was complete. Time to finish the job. Prepare main batteries for planetary bombardment, he ordered. Target their military installations first, then their cities. But something nagged at him. The human pilot who had damaged his ship, the impossible flight pattern, the way they refused to surrender even when defeat was certain. In all his years of conquest, he had never encountered anything like it. Perhaps these humans were more dangerous than they appeared. Perhaps the Empire had underestimated them. But it was too late for second thoughts now. The die was cast, and blood had been drawn. The real war was about to begin. 3 days after the first battle, space around New Eden filled with ships. Not human ships, but Zephyrian vessels that blotted out the stars. 12 massive battle cruisers moved in perfect formation, surrounded by 40 smaller destroyers and hundreds of support craft. It was the largest Imperial fleet assembled in over a century. Emperor Vextar himself commanded from his flagship, the Cosmic Throne. The golden ship dwarfed even the other battle cruisers, its hull decorated with the conquered banners of 400 worlds. The Emperor stood on his bridge watching the human colony grow larger on his screens. Status report, Vextar commanded. Admiral Torkek bowed low before speaking. All ships report ready, my lord. The humans have 3 small destroyers, and perhaps 20 fighters remaining. Our victory is assured. Good. We will broadcast this conquest to the entire galaxy. Let all species see what happens to those who defy the Empire. The Emperor expected terror from the humans, expected desperate pleas for mercy. Instead, he received another message from Commander Brooks. Emperor Vextar, welcome to New Eden. We hope you brought enough ships. The casual tone shocked the Imperial bridge crew. This human commander spoke as if she held the advantage, as if her tiny force could threaten the mightiest fleet in the galaxy. Sir, the communications officer reported, we're detecting unusual energy readings from the planet's surface. The humans appear to be powering up industrial facilities. Industrial facilities. Vextar frowned. What kind of industries? Mining equipment, construction machinery, power plants, everything is operating at maximum capacity. The Emperor dismissed this information. Desperate humans trying to hide their valuables, no doubt. It didn't matter. Soon there would be nothing left to hide. Begin the assault. Show these humans the price of defiance. But as the Zephyrian fleet moved closer to New Eden, they discovered that the planet had become something unexpected. The industrial facilities weren't hiding anything. They were weapons. Commander Brooks watched from her underground command center as the first Imperial ships moved into orbit. She had spent 3 days turning her entire world into a trap. Mining charges had been placed in the asteroid belt. Construction equipment had been converted into missile launchers. Even the orbital traffic control satellites had been rigged with explosives. All units, this is Brooks. Welcome to hell. Fire everything. The asteroid belt erupted in carefully. Timed explosions. Rocks the size of buildings flew toward the Zephyrian fleet at incredible speeds. The aliens' shields could stop energy weapons, but chunks of stone and metal moving at orbital velocity were harder to deal with. Several destroyers took hits, their shields overloading from the kinetic impacts. One battlecruiser, the Void Hunter, found itself in the path of a mining station that Brooks had launched like a giant missile. The station's nuclear reactor exploded on contact, lighting up space with a miniature sun. What is this? Admiral Torkek shouted. They're using their own infrastructure as weapons. Emperor Vextar watched in amazement as more explosions bloomed around his fleet. The humans had turned their entire solar system into a weapons platform. Satellites became bombs, space stations became missiles. Even chunks of space debris had been fitted with small rockets to guide them toward Imperial ships. But the most shocking surprise came from space itself. The Earth Defense Fleet arrived not with fanfare or formal battle formations, but screaming, out of hyperspace like demons from the void. Admiral Carlos Martinez led 27 human warships in an attack that ignored every rule of civilized warfare. The human ships looked primitive compared to Zephyrian vessels. Their hulls were simple, metal, their weapons crude, their shields basic energy barriers, but they fought with a savagery that stunned the Imperial forces. Captain Rodriguez, now commanding the destroyer Iron Will, led his ship directly into the midst of the enemy formation. His vessel was outgunned 10-1, but he didn't try to fight fair. Instead, he rammed his ship into the side of a Zephyrian cruiser, his hull exploding in a burst of nuclear fire that crippled both vessels. "All ships," Admiral Martinez broadcast, "remember what they did to our colonies. Show them what human fury looks like." The human fleet abandoned all defensive tactics. Ships that should have stayed in formation scattered like a pack of wolves. Destroyers attacked battlecruisers head-on. Fighters swarmed larger vessels like angry insects. Every human ship fought as if its crew had nothing left to lose. Lieutenant Kelly Zhang piloted her fighter, the Star Dancer, through a gap in the Kier, Eternal Dominion's shields. Instead of attacking the weapons or engines, she flew her ship directly into the alien vessel's bridge. The explosion killed her instantly, but it also destroyed the ship's command center and left it drifting helplessly. Major Ben Tucker led boarding, parties that forced their way onto Zephyrian vessels through damaged airlocks. The aliens expected civilized combat, formal surrenders, proper treatment of prisoners. Instead, they got human soldiers who fought with knives and fists when their guns ran out of ammunition. Tucker's men turned the corridors of enemy ships into battle zones where superior technology meant nothing. The fighting raged for hours. Human ships died by the dozens, but they took Imperial vessels with them. More importantly, they fought in ways that violated every expectation the Zephyrians had about warfare. Emperor Vextar watched his perfect formation dissolve into chaos. Human ships appeared everywhere at once, attacking from impossible angles. They used ramming attacks, suicide runs, and boarding actions that no civilized species would attempt. Worst of all, they seemed to be enjoying it. "Sir," Admiral Torkek reported, his voice shaking, "we've lost 6 battlecruisers and 15 destroyers. The humans are broadcasting our battle frequencies to the entire galaxy." "What do you mean?" "They're turning this into a propaganda broadcast. Every species in the Empire can watch us struggle against a primitive enemy. This was a nightmare Vextar had never imagined. The Empire's power came from fear, from the belief that resistance was impossible. If other species saw humans fighting back successfully, it could inspire rebellions across the galaxy. End this quickly, the Emperor commanded. Use whatever force necessary. But Admiral Martinez had one more surprise waiting. As more Zephyrian reinforcements arrived, the human commander opened channels to every ship in both fleets. "Attention, all vessels. You're about to witness something new in galactic warfare. Humanity has a saying, if you're going to go down, take as many enemies with you as possible." Martinez's ship, the Liberty's Dawn, began to glow with dangerous energy. Its reactor was overloading, building toward a catastrophic explosion. But this wasn't an accident or a last resort. It was a deliberate tactic. All human ships. Initiate. Protocol 7 on my mark. Across the battlefield, every remaining human vessel began the same process. Their reactors overloaded in carefully controlled sequences, creating explosions that sent energy cascades through local space. The cascades interfered with Zephyrian shields and weapons, creating windows of vulnerability that other human ships exploited. Captain Morrison, commanding from a hidden position near the edge of the system, watched the battle with grim satisfaction. The humans were losing ships, but they were proving a point that would echo across the galaxy. They were showing that the Empire could be hurt, that its ships could be destroyed, that its perfect formations could be broken by sheer human stubbornness. On the surface of New Eden, Commander Brooks coordinated the ground-based attacks. Her people had survived the orbital bombardment by hiding in deep shelters, but they hadn't given up fighting. Surface-to-space missiles launched from hidden silos. Industrial equipment continued to hurl debris at enemy ships. Even civilian vehicles had been converted into mobile weapons platforms. "Status report," Brooks called out. "We've lost most of the fleet," Major Blake reported, "but we've hurt them bad. They've lost more ships in this one battle than in the last 50 conquests combined." "Good. Send this message to Earth Command. Phase 1 complete. The galaxy has seen that humans can make the Empire bleed. Now comes Phase 2. Emperor Vextar stared at the tactical displays showing his damaged fleet. Half his ships were destroyed or crippled. The humans had been defeated, but at a cost that shocked him. No species had ever inflicted such damage on an Imperial fleet. Worse, the battle had been broadcast across subspace frequencies to every corner of the galaxy. On 1,000 worlds, oppressed populations watched primitive humans fight the mighty Empire to a standstill. The message was clear. The Empire could be challenged. The Empire could be hurt. "Sir," his communications officer reported, "we're receiving messages from across the galaxy. Some are from our own governors, reporting unrest on their worlds. Others are from rebel groups we thought were extinct." Vextar closed his eyes. This was exactly what he had feared. The humans had given other species something more dangerous than weapons or technology. They had given them hope. "Recall all available fleets," he ordered. "If this spreads, we could face rebellions on 100 worlds." The Emperor looked once more at the remains of New Eden. The human colony was destroyed, its population scattered to the stars. By any military measure, the Empire had won, but victories that cost half a fleet and inspired galaxy-wide rebellion felt more like defeats. News traveled faster than Imperial warships across the galaxy. Within days, every inhabited world had heard about the battle at New Eden. The story grew with each telling, but the core facts remained unchanged. Humans had made the mighty Zephyrian Empire bleed. On the slave world of Corvain Prime, workers in the crystal mines whispered the tale during their rest periods. Jorak, an old Corvain who had lived through 3 failed rebellions, listened to the younger workers with growing amazement. "They say the humans destroyed half the Imperial fleet," whispered Neela, a young female who had never known freedom. "They say the humans fought even when they knew they would die." "Impossible," Jorak muttered, but his heart wanted to believe. "The Empire is too strong. No one can fight them and win." "The humans didn't win," said Krem, a scarred veteran of the mining crews. "But they didn't lose either. They showed the galaxy that the Empire can be hurt." Similar conversations took place on hundreds of worlds. In the factory cities of Belgen 7, workers slowed their production and began to remember songs of freedom their grandparents had sung. On the prison world of Draktor, inmates looked up at the stars and wondered if escape might be possible after all. The effect was not lost on Emperor Vextar. Reports flooded into his palace from across the Empire. Production was down on 70 worlds. 3 governor-generals had requested additional military support to deal with worker unrest. Most disturbing of all, rebel groups that had been quiet for decades were becoming active again. "How bad is it?" Vextar asked Admiral Torkek during their emergency meeting. "Worse than we feared, my lord. The humans broadcast their battle on all frequencies. The footage has spread to every corner of the Empire. Some worlds are reporting organized resistance activities for the first time in centuries." Vextar studied the reports on his desk. Each one told the same story. The human example was spreading like a plague. Species that had accepted imperial rule for generations were beginning to question that rule. "What about our response to the human worlds?" "That is the other problem, my lord. After the battle at New Eden, the surviving humans retreated to their remaining colonies. But they didn't surrender. They've fortified Liberty Station and Haven's Rest, and they're broadcasting messages encouraging other species to resist." The Emperor's claws scraped against his throne. This was exactly what he had hoped to avoid. The humans were turning their defeat into a rallying cry for rebellion. "And our fleet status?" "Still recovering, my lord. We lost more ships at New Eden than in the previous 10 campaigns combined. Worse, our ship crews are shaken. Many are requesting transfers away from the frontier. They don't want to face humans again." This was perhaps the most disturbing news of all. Zephyrian warriors had conquered the galaxy through superior technology and unshakable confidence. If that confidence was breaking, the entire Imperial system could collapse. "Sir," interrupted a communications officer. "Urgent message from Governor Celtic on Belgen 7. The hologram showed a nervous-looking Zephyrian official. His usual arrogant composure was gone, replaced by barely controlled panic. "My Lord Emperor," Celtic began. I need immediate military reinforcement. The factory workers have organized some kind of resistance movement. They're calling themselves the Human Liberation Front and demanding impossible things like fair wages and shorter work hours. Vextar's blood chilled. Human Liberation Front? Yes, my lord. They claim to be inspired by the human resistance at New Eden. They say if humans can fight the Empire, so can they. The movement is spreading to other factory complexes. I fear we may face a general uprising. More reports arrived within the hour. On Andromax Prime, the dock workers had gone on strike. On Cygni Station, the mining unions were demanding representation in colonial government. On distant Vortex 7, entire cities had stopped paying imperial taxes. This is spreading too fast, Admiral Torkek warned. If we don't stop it soon, we could face coordinated rebellions across hundreds of worlds. Emperor Vextar made a decision that would change galactic history forever. We will make an example that no one will forget. Prepare the planet crackers. Planet crackers were the Empire's ultimate weapons, massive devices that could split a world's crust and make it permanently uninhabitable. They had been used only 3 times in Imperial history, and each time the result had been absolute submission from surrounding systems. Sir, Torkek hesitated. Using planet crackers against the human colonies will be seen as an act of desperation. It might make the humans into martyrs. Better martyrs than successful rebels, Vextar snapped. If other species see what happens, to those who defy the Empire, they will remember their place. The orders went out through subspace channels. The planet cracker fleet began its journey toward human space. But the humans were ready for this escalation. Captain Morrison had expected the Empire to use its ultimate weapons. That was why he had spent weeks preparing what he called the final message. As soon as long-range sensors detected the planet cracker fleet, he began broadcasting on every frequency the Empire used. People of the galaxy, Morrison's voice carried across the stars, the Empire comes to murder our remaining worlds. They bring planet crackers, weapons that will turn our colonies into dead rocks floating in space. They do this because we dared to fight back, because we showed you that resistance is possible. The message continued for hours, broadcast from hidden transmitters throughout human space. Morrison spoke not just to humans, but to every oppressed species in the galaxy. We know we cannot stop them. Our ships are destroyed, our weapons are gone. But before we die, we want you to know something important. Freedom is not about winning or losing. Freedom is about choosing to fight even when fight means death. On Corvain Prime, the miners stopped work completely when they heard Morrison's words. Old Jorak stood up in the crystal caverns and spoke words he had not said in 50 years. The Empire fears us, he told his fellow workers. Look what they do to humans who fight back. They destroy entire worlds because they cannot destroy the idea of freedom. Similar scenes played out across the galaxy. The threat to destroy human worlds with planet crackers had the opposite effect the Emperor intended. Instead of terrifying other species into submission, it showed them that the Empire was desperate. It proved that human resistance had hurt them badly. On the trading world of Nexus Prime, Captain Zara Venn received Morrison's broadcast while loading supplies for a routine cargo run. Venn was not human, but she had dealt with humans before. She found them strange but admirable in their stubborn refusal to accept defeat. Change course, she told her crew. We're going to human space. Captain, her first officer protested, that's a war zone. The Empire will destroy any ship that interferes. Then we better be fast, Venn replied. Load every spare food container and medical supply we have. If the humans are going to die, at least they won't die hungry. Venn was not alone. Across the galaxy, ships from a dozen species began moving toward human space. Some carried supplies. Others carried volunteers. A few carried weapons smuggled from Imperial armories. The human example had awakened something that the Empire thought it had destroyed forever: the willingness to help others fight for freedom. Emperor Vextar received reports of this unauthorized traffic with growing alarm. Stop them, he ordered. Any ship entering human space without Imperial authorization is to be destroyed. But there were too many ships moving from too many directions. The Empire's fleet was still recovering from the battle at New Eden. They could not cover every approach, route to human space. More disturbing were the reports from Imperial worlds themselves. On Sigma Colony, an entire regiment of Zephyrian soldiers had refused orders to fire on protesting workers. On Beta Stronghold, the base commander reported that half his troops were requesting transfers rather than participate in anti-human operations. "The infection is spreading through our own ranks," Admiral Torkek warned. "Our soldiers are beginning to question the righteousness of our cause." This was Vex-Tar's greatest fear realized. The Zephyrian Empire ruled through absolute certainty, in its own superiority. If that certainty cracked, if their own people began to doubt, the Empire could crumble from within. "How long until the planet crackers reach human space?" the Emperor asked. 6 days, my lord." "Good. Once we destroy their worlds, this madness will end. The galaxy will see that resistance leads only to annihilation." But even as Vex-Tar spoke these words, he felt a cold doubt growing in his heart. The humans had surprised him before. They had turned certain defeat into propaganda victory. They had inspired rebellions across hundreds of worlds with their example. What if destroying their planets only made their message stronger? On Liberty Station, Commander Brooks received word that help was coming from unexpected sources. Ships from dozens of species were running the Imperial blockade, bringing supplies and volunteers. More importantly, they were taking human civilians to safety. "Status report," Brooks called to her staff. "Evacuation is ahead of schedule," Major Blake reported. "We've got ships from the Antaran Republic, the Free Traders Union, even some Corvain vessels. They're risking everything to help us." Okana smiled for the first time in weeks. The humans had set out to send a message about resistance. The Planet Cracker fleet arrived at Liberty Station exactly on schedule. 12 massive ships, each one carrying enough firepower to split a world in half. Emperor Vex-Tar commanded from the lead vessel, determined to watch personally as human resistance died forever. "All ships report ready, my lord," Admiral Torkek announced. "We can begin planetary bombardment on your command." Vex-Tar looked at the tactical displays showing the human colony below. Liberty Station was a beautiful world, covered in green forests and blue oceans. Soon it would be nothing but floating rocks and dead space. "Open a channel to the human defenders," the Emperor commanded. "Let them hear their doom." Captain Morrison's face appeared on the communication screen. He stood on the bridge of his hidden command ship, surrounded by the last few dozen humans willing to fight to the end. "Emperor Vex-Tar," Morrison said calmly. "Welcome to Liberty Station. I see you brought your biggest guns this time. Captain Morrison, your resistance ends today. Surrender now, and I will allow your people to die quickly. Continue fighting, and they will watch their world burn for days before death claims them." Morrison smiled, and something in that expression made Vex-Tar uneasy. "You know, Emperor, we gave you a warning at the very beginning. Just one warning. We told you to leave our colonies alone, or face the consequences. Your consequences were pathetic. A few destroyed ships, some minor rebellions that we will crush. Nothing that threatens the Empire." "You sure about that?" Morrison asked. "Because I think you're about to learn what human consequences really look like." Before Vex-Tar could respond, alarms began sounding throughout his fleet. Weapon systems failed across multiple ships. Targeting computers showed impossible readings. Shield generators shut down without explanation. "What is happening?" the Emperor roared. "Sir," the tactical officer reported in panic. "Our computer systems are being infected by some kind of virus. It's spreading through our quantum communication links." On the screen, Morrison's smile grew wider. "Meet Lieutenant Sam Rodriguez. You remember him, don't you? The crazy pilot who damaged your ship at New Eden?" A new face appeared beside Morrison. Rodriguez looked different now, older somehow, but his eyes held the same fire they had during his impossible attack run. "Hello, Emperor," Rodriguez said. "Surprise. I didn't die when you thought I did. Instead, I spent 3 weeks inside one of your cruisers, learning how your systems work. Very educational." Vex-Tar's blood turned to ice. "Impossible. Our ships, were destroyed. Some were. But the Void Hunter only looked destroyed. My ship punched through its hull, and my team and I have been living inside it ever since. Invisible ghosts in your perfect machine. Rodriguez held up a small device. This is what humans call a virus bomb. It carries a computer program designed specifically for Zephyrian technology. While you were busy destroying our fleet, we were busy planting these gifts on every ship that came near us. The virus spread faster than any biological plague. It jumped from ship to ship through the quantum communication network that connected all Imperial vessels. Within minutes, every ship in the galaxy carrying Zephyrian technology was affected. The virus doesn't destroy your ships, Morrison explained as chaos erupted across the Imperial fleet. That would be too easy. Instead, it makes them unreliable. Your targeting systems will miss 1 shot in 10. Your shields will fail at random moments. Your engines will stutter when you need them most. Admiral Torkek tried desperately to regain control. Shut down all quantum links. Isolate the affected systems. Too late, Rodriguez said cheerfully. The virus is already in your core computers. It's learning your systems as we speak, adapting to your countermeasures. And the best part? Every time you destroy a human ship, the explosion sends out a quantum pulse that makes the virus stronger. Emperor Vextar stared at the tactical displays as his mighty fleet fell apart around him. Ships drifted helplessly as their engines failed. Weapons fired at empty space as targeting computers malfunctioned. The most advanced military force in the galaxy was being destroyed by a computer program written by primitive humans. This is impossible, Vextar whispered. Our technology is superior. Our shield should stop any attack. Your technology is superior, Morrison agreed. But it's also predictable. You've conquered so many worlds using the same methods that you forgot how to adapt. You built your entire civilization around the idea that overwhelming force always wins. More alarms sounded as additional systems failed. The quantum communication network that held the Empire together was collapsing as the virus spread to every corner of the galaxy. Sir? A communications officer reported. We're receiving messages from across the Empire. The virus has reached our home worlds. Planetary defense systems are failing. Administrative computers are shutting down. The entire Imperial network is compromised. But the humans weren't finished. Admiral Martinez emerged from his hiding place in the asteroid belt, leading a fleet of ships that should not have existed. Vessels from dozens of species flew alongside the remaining human warships, all of them carrying weapons and crews ready to fight. Emperor Vextar, Martinez broadcast to the galaxy. You wanted to see human fury. You wanted to test our resolve. Well, here's your answer. We don't just fight for ourselves. We fight for everyone who has ever been enslaved by your empire. The battle that followed was unlike anything in galactic history. Imperial ships, crippled by the virus, faced an alliance of species that had learned human tactics. Corvain fighters used suicide runs. Antaran cruisers rammed Imperial vessels. Even the peaceful Deltari sent ships equipped with mining charges converted into weapons. Captain Morrison revealed the final element of humanity's plan. You see, Emperor, you made one crucial mistake. You thought destroying our worlds would end our resistance, but we're not fighting for worlds anymore. We're fighting for the idea that no one should kneel to tyrants. The human ships began to glow with the same dangerous energy they had used at New Eden. But this time, they weren't overloading their reactors to create local damage. They were creating a cascade effect that would render entire star systems uninhabitable. Every human ship is equipped with a quantum cascade device, Morrison explained. If you destroy us, the resulting explosion will make this entire sector of space lethal for 1,000 years. Your choice, Emperor. Leave now, or watch your empire die with us. Vextar faced a decision no emperor had ever confronted. Retreat from primitive humans, or risk destroying half the galaxy in a mutual annihilation that would end his civilization forever. Sir, Admiral Torkek urged, we must withdraw. The virus has crippled our fleet. The humans have turned our own technology against us. If we continue fighting, we risk losing everything. For the first time in his life, Emperor Vextar gave the order to retreat. The Planet Cracker fleet turned away from Liberty Station, abandoning their mission. The most powerful military force in the galaxy fled from a handful of human ships and their ragtag allies. But the damage was already done. The virus continued spreading through Imperial space. On 1,000 worlds, oppressed populations rose up as their Zephyrian overseers lost control of their technology. The quantum communication network that had held the Empire together collapsed completely. Within months, the Zephyrian Empire lost control of half its territory. Species that had been enslaved for centuries declared independence and formed their own governments. The Free Worlds Alliance grew from the ashes of imperial tyranny, with humans serving not as rulers but as teachers, showing other species how to fight for their freedom. Commander Brooks stood in the rebuilt city of New Liberty, watching ships from dozens of worlds come and go in peaceful trade. The colony had been destroyed, but it had risen again as the capital of something greater than any empire. "Status report," she said to Major Blake, now her chief administrator. "The latest refugee ships have arrived from the former Imperial Core worlds. We've got housing for another 10,000 beings. The shipyards are producing vessels for the Corvain Defense Fleet, and we've received formal requests for membership from 15 more worlds." Brooks nodded. "Any word from Earth?" "Captain Morrison sends his regards. The Earth government has officially recognized the Free Worlds Alliance as humanity's primary diplomatic partner. They're sending colony ships to help settle the refugees." A young human soldier approached, barely 18 and wearing the uniform of the Alliance Defense Force. "Commander Brooks? I'm Lieutenant Danny Walsh. I wanted to thank you." "Thank me for what, son?" "For showing us how to fight. My parents were slaves on Sigma Colony until the uprising. They always told me that humans taught the galaxy what freedom looked like." Brooks smiled. "We didn't teach anyone anything they didn't already know. We just reminded them that sometimes standing up to bullies is worth the risk." Years later, historians would debate the causes of the Empire's fall. Some pointed to technological factors, others to economic pressures, but those who lived through it knew the truth. The Zephyrian Empire collapsed because one species refused to kneel, and their example showed the galaxy that tyrants only have power over those who choose to obey them. Captain Morrison, now an old man, received one final message from Emperor Vexitar. The former ruler of the galaxy sent it from his exile on a remote world,